Hello, and welcome to another episode of In My Experience with yours truly, Christine DeGinto. This podcast is a space where I speak from lived experience. The moments that shaped me, challenged me, and changed the way that I understand myself in the world. The awakenings, the breakdowns, the moments that cracked me open, asked me to stay present, be embodied, and be honest with myself. I share my stories not to persuade or define truth for anyone else, but to offer perspective, to explore the gray areas we don't often have language for, to slow things down and listen more closely to what's happening beneath the surface. You'll hear solo episodes where I reflect on my own initiations, spiritual gifts, and the systems that tried to define me. And conversations with guests who have walked strange, beautiful, and sometimes painful paths of their own and come back with wisdom to share with us. I invite you to take what resonates, leave the rest, and trust your own experience as valid. Thank you for being here. This is In My Experience. Hello, and welcome back. I realized that in part one, I mentioned we would be talking about dragons in part two, but that was incorrect. I apologize for that. It's been a little bit hectic over here. I recently started homeschooling my daughter. We've wanted to do it for years, and we're both very excited, but it happened very quickly, and I had to get a new computer. So in last week, I was editing the episode before it got out. I was sharing the computer with my daughter, and I really didn't have much time to make sure everything was correct. I hope you all forgive me. I forgive myself. This is part two of my conversation with Erin French of Natural Heart Alchemy. If you haven't listened to part one yet, I recommend starting there. We laid the foundation regarding the Akashic field, mentorship, and spiritual lineage. We also discussed dragons. Part two moves more fully into lived experience. In this episode, I share a bit more about my own spiritual awakening and plant medicine experiences. We talk honestly about integration and the pitfalls that can happen when expanded states are not properly supported. We also explore the quantum field, timeline creation, and how the Akashic Records function as a frequency that we tune into rather than a place that we visit. This part of the conversation is reflective, nuanced, and very human. Let's continue. But I had a very fast spiritual awakening, and I suddenly had abilities that, though they are my abilities, they weren't trained for, and they were not supposed to come on board that quickly and at that time. So it was very destabilizing, but it was also the validation that I received from plant medicine was I was able to see the same way. Like I looked up in the sky and I saw the grid lines and I could see sometimes I would notice people's faces changing a bit. Maybe they had an entity in them, and they would start to come out and I would see that. So it was validating for me experiencing plant medicine because I had never done that before
Mhm.
and had a spiritual experience of being able to see and sense through different dimensions, thinking I'm crazy, right? And then slowly calming down, doing Reiki, grounding, all this stuff. And then, within a year I did my first plant medicine experience. And as soon as I was in the journey, I was like, wow, this is what I felt like. This is the type of stuff that I saw. This is the level of hearing that I had. Like, so I'm not crazy. And like, but then I was like, was I drugged? And I was like, no, no one drugged me for a month. You know what I mean? So I was like,
I love that so much, though. I love that story because, again, what you're sharing is that you had the awakening first, and you went to all these realms, and then the plant medicine confirmed where you were.
Yes.
because it's like, there's, to be really clear, these plant medicines do allow us to go out into realms of consciousness that are not, for many of us, normal, quote, everyday levels of consciousness, especially when we're not fully awakened. And
Mhm.
yet, it's also really important to know, from my perspective, that they don't take us anywhere that we cannot go and don't go naturally as humans by ourselves.
Yes.
Really, like, they just open
Yes.
doors, and we, without the medicine, we can and do go as humans everywhere
Mhm.
naturally. This is our
Mhm.
birthright, is to expand and be alchemists of energy across all space and time. So I actually
Yes.
really love that, and you mentioned something really quickly earlier, that your awakening was really quickly and maybe not meant to happen in that way. And I'll just offer the counterpoint that, of course, it was meant to happen that way, because it did.
Yeah. Oh,
Right?
well, yes.
So
Yes.
of course, right? I'm just
I
saying, like,
think
of
it was.
course it
Yes.
was meant to happen that way.
Very
But the caution
complex.
too is
Yeah.
that, if people do plant medicines early on, or if even if they do them, quote, recreationally, and take some doses that are larger, what happens is, if your consciousness hasn't seen those realms before, and you go out and see things and then bring those levels of awareness back to a very low state of vibration that hasn't awakened, that can lead to, all the, sort of Westerners might call it like a psychosis, or some kind of
Yes.
a
Yeah.
schizophrenic break, or different versions
Agreed.
of that, because
Mhm.
if our brain hasn't naturally expanded, if our energy body hasn't naturally expanded and integrated to these different levels of energetic experience,
Mhm.
there's no frame of reference. And either people might go, quote, crazy and sort of disassociate, or also what happens is people might think it's important, and they think that, like, I'm God now and I have the answers, and
That
get
was
really
what
even
I was terrified of. Yeah. Right.
and
Yeah.
get
Because
even
I was like,
more
oh my
stuck in
God,
their
how can I?
ego. And
Yeah.
that can be sort of like
Yeah.
this, I'll say this way, it's sort of like a false prophet thing, where, like, people can say, like, I'm so important, and I'm gonna, like, like,
Yeah.
trademark my school, like, like,
Yes.
ooh, I've had this really profound spiritual experience that's very important, and I'm gonna say, like,
Yes.
my school trademarked, and, like, come to me, and this sort of
Yes.
grandiosity, which
Yeah.
we see around the spiritual realm. And when I see that, I'm just sort of like, when I see that and people ask me about it, I'm just like, if there's any kind of that energy, for me personally, my advice is, like, go the other way.
Yeah. One thing that I was hearing, oh, just it's interesting that now it's coming back up, and it's probably I heard it because of what we were about to talk about. But
Of course.
earlier I was hearing, it's funny that if anybody is ever telling you what to do, you don't have to trust them. Like, you don't have to go with what they're saying, because no one knows. No one knows for sure. Okay. We all have these experiences. We've only ever actually experienced our own nervous systems. So it's really hard to say this is the way it is, right? And and even if we say this is the way it is, realities and the dimensions are shifting every millisecond or so. It could be different like that. So it's like, how can we say how any one thing is? I don't know. That can make you crazy
Taking it
too.
back to the Akashic Records, right? So,
Yeah.
I do readings all day with people, and it doesn't always go this way, but some people really want to know. I'll just give an example. It's really common, like, what's going to happen with this relationship? Like, that kind of thing is a super common
I
question
know
that
I've asked you that. Yeah.
right. And
Unnamed.
one thing that I'm really careful to say is, around the Akashic field, is like, hey, just to be really, really clear, this is not fortune telling.
Mhm.
And in fact, like, I don't really know what a fortune teller is. Like, and I say that kind of, but, like, I
Yeah.
don't, I don't, I don't know what that is, and I'm not gonna diss it so much. But for the way I see the universe, it's like, I'm gonna stay away from that. And so for me, I'll just share like this, like, what I see, and I don't think this is reality. This is just the way my brain presents it to me, so I can see it visually. So I see the future in front of us, and I see the past behind us. And
Mhm.
what I see is a grid of energetic lines, like little threads, all the way up to, like, huge, like, ship ropes. And
Mhm.
these are timelines of possibility. And the bigger they
Yeah.
are, the more energy is flowing through those possibilities. But
Yes.
at any given moment, there's an infinite level of threads to ropes going out. For me, it's from our hearts.
Yeah.
When I see it, out from the heart, away from the person in the future. And this is all the possible timelines of anything that could possibly happen. And they're
Yeah.
all, so the quote, at any given moment, in the middle for me, and this again, this is just a representation of the way it's formed for me. In the middle, there's like the biggest flow of what is going to happen, and
Hmm.
that's where most of the energy is in terms of the trajectory of the person's
Yes.
future. But
Hmm.
there's also like these little threads on the side, and I'm not going to say this is just a make believe story, but like I could go outside and jump off the balcony right here. I'm in this little hotel, and I could do that. And there's a thread that possibility happens. I'm not going to do that. There's no energy there, but there's a tiniest thread where that's possible,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And there's
Yes.
there's every other possible infinite outcome that could happen. And so when people say like, okay, what's going to happen with this person, with my partner, whatever, I'm like, okay, right now in this snapshot, I'm willing to share that this is the energy that I see through you right now.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then from there, I can sort of say like, is there one main thread? Are there a number of main threads that are all supposed, I'll go that far. And then beyond that,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, it's you're okay, everything's happening as it needs to happen, chill.
Hmm.
Don't
Hmm.
be pushing too
Hmm.
much.
And it's frustrating too when someone would, I mean, I know I've asked you that question, but that's sort of like we were saying, when you can't answer it for yourself and you need help and then to, so yeah, that is understandably a common question, but unfortunately for us as Akashic readers, that is the most basic question. It is like has nothing to do with your soul pretty much, unless it's like your twin flame or your soulmate, or understandably people want to know things, but it's almost like if you could ask a more dynamic question instead of what's going to happen with this relationship, it's like, who am I going to be? And is this person still going to be? You know what I mean? It's not like, it's
That's
not the
exactly
relationship.
it.
It's
I
you,
also
it's
really get, I'm
your,
sure you do too in your own way, like people say like, okay, I have all these questions, and they say like, okay, what about my work, and what about money, and then what about my kids, and then what about love and my relationship, and then what about my soul path? And they're like, these are
Mhm,
in their mind, like these are like, oh, I've this is so much, there's all these different things. And in my mind, I'm like, when they're saying this, my inner response is like, yeah, this is all the same thing,
yeah, yes.
right? It's all the same question, and until people are aligned, they don't see it with all. It's perfect. It's okay. And when we get through the session, what they realize is, and what comes through 99% of the time is this. It's always the same, and it's simply when we align to our truth, when we let go and flow with the confidence and relaxation both, that we are on the right flow, and we surrender to the universe and the pull of our soul's path, then all of that just takes care of itself.
Hmm. Hmm.
The partner comes in, or the partner realigns that you already have, or whatever version of that is your karma, when we're actually true aligned with our truth. And
Hmm.
that's when the abundance comes in. And that's when the relationship with your kids miraculously shifts. And that's when, et cetera, et cetera. And, when we're in line, it all happens. And I've seen that happen with myself,
Hmm.
even early on, when I was still like learning to believe, like a couple years before you and I met, I was, doing my spiritual work, and I integrated a degree of like deep self responsibility. There's a prayer from the book, The Course of Miracles,
Oh,
and there's a
yes.
prayer called the responsibility prayer, which simply, one piece of it says like, anything that appears to happen to me, I receive exactly as I have asked.
Hmm.
Some tough
Mm.
medicine.
Hmm.
Anything, or maybe it's everything, but it's, either way,
Yeah.
that appears to happen to me, I receive exactly as I have asked. And so I had been
Yes.
meditating on that for a while, and then I was able to like metabolize that and say, okay, wow, I can't blame anybody. Oh, you know,
Not even yourself.
this person in my past that did all these did all these things to me. I have to take responsibility for all of that. Oof, etc. And so I went through a morning meditation where I was like, this was weeks and weeks of this, but like there was one day when I was like, okay, I got this, and I accept and I forgive. And I went
Hmm.
into work, and at the time, my boss and I, it wasn't bad, but we were having sort of these little arguments in our meetings that were kind of like frictionful, and our meetings were not pleasant. And I went into work that day and had a meeting with my boss, and literally I was watching the meeting happen unfold, and it was like she was a different person, and the whole dynamic was entirely different. And it was smooth and flowing and effortless and easy and aligned. And like it was one day to the next, nothing really had changed. And yet I saw that I had just shifted the frame into
Mhm,
alignment with acceptance. And
mhm,
unconsciously, the meeting went miraculously different. And it was like,
mhm.
okay, that was the immediate confirmation that I needed to just like drop in deeper into trust into
Yeah.
the process. And then I've seen it unfold, so powerfully. The more we align, the more we surrender deeply from our soul and just say, okay, this flow of this life simply is.
Mhm.
And when I allow that, everything takes care of itself. And things when I do that, and still all of us, sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's more difficult. But
Yeah.
still, as we go through this, as I surrender deeper and deeper in this way over time, my life gets more and more magical, more and more aligned, more and more expansive.
Mhm.
The goodness of my life, the magic of my life is unfathomable to who I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Like, if
And
I had
you've never seen it
looking
coming.
back 5 or 10 years, there is no way I could have imagined how beautifully magical my life is right now.
Yeah.
It's like makes me smile so deeply. We're like, oh my goodness.
So it's so funny though. Like, of course, we always have plans. We have to make plans. We have to have goals and plans, and we think we know what we're doing, right? We think we know
Yeah.
what we want, but as you go, things shift and change, and you just slowly along the way, you're like, wait a minute, this is great. This is actually great. I
Right.
didn't know I wanted this, but cool.
Well, exactly. And there's a common sort of new age thing, right? Any prayer you have is actually too small.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've heard some version of that. And there's like
Yes.
internet memes,
Yes.
right? Anytime you have a specific prayer, like anything you can define about what's possible for yourself is vastly smaller than what the universe can actually have in store for you. And that's been a million percent true in my life, like a million
Yeah.
percent.
Yeah.
The looking back, I didn't know it, but the life I was living, and I was, so back before I was doing this, let's say 10 years ago, but whatever, I was a corporate executive. um I was flying around with expense accounts and occasionally being picked up by the largest corporations in America, sitting out their like private jet to take me to their boardroom kind of negotiations,
Hmm.
hundreds of millions of dollar kind of deals and stuff like that, expense accounts,
Jesus.
whatever, living that lifestyle, miserable AF,
Hmm.
dead inside, bored beyond tears. And even then, like I was making like money hand over fist, kind of, but even then, there was a flow of money that I wasn't being nourished by it. I was
Hmm.
sort of being strangled by it in a certain way, and I wasn't happy. My relationship wasn't great, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So this is coming from a person that, from a certain perspective, quote, had it all. And that's all relative. There are people that had a lot
Mhm.
more than me, but I was sort of on that path of like, you know, top level affluence in America, whatever the heck that means.
Whatever that is.
And I was dead inside in a lot of ways. I was,
Mhm.
not fully, there's a spark that was, and I had been doing spiritual work for decades before that. And this was a period of time when I
Yeah.
had sort of like turned my back on it and
Yeah.
gone into materialism and sort of rationalism and all this. And
Mhm.
when I look back on my, compared to my life right now, where from that perspective, I've given most of that up, all of that up, and just said, I'm going to
Mhm.
live in flow and trust and do the work that I know is my soul's purpose, which is for me to help align and awaken and support people's transition into these more expansive states of consciousness and alignment.
Mhm.
Like, I'm personally so much more wealthy now in abundance, in friendships and
Mhm.
experiences and opportunities, in
Yeah.
joy, in spark, in unexpected roots opening up and serendipity and etc. Like, the abundance
Yes.
I have right now is so vast, and I'm so
Mm.
stoked every single day to be alive in ways that I didn't even know were possible.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to hear that. I was just imagining like you taking a flight to go somewhere now with your intentions and whatever monies are funding that, the energy behind it is completely different. Like I was seeing
Completely.
you being flown by these other corporations and it's like the money that paid for that was a different frequency. And that you know what I mean? So it's like a whole
Heavy, It was dense, it was transactional in a
Mhm.
very, and and there's, for me, with my ego, there's always, you're in these room with all these, 90% men in
Mhm.
suits,
Mhm.
and there's always this sort of this um perspective of failure and fear around the whole, from everyone. There's always a winner and a loser. This is it. There's
Yeah.
always a winner and a loser. And so there's always, and there's always a better position, and there's always expectations of growth and this and that. There's a heaviness, there's a density.
Mhm.
And then we go out and we, quote, live it up afterwards. There's always the expectations. One of the parties was always buying dinner, and dinner was always trying to like be the impressive thing. So it's always the nice restaurant where you get the grand plateau of the seafood platter to the
Mhm.
ceiling, and then
Mhm.
all the steaks and bourbon you want, and just like night after night you do this, and just like dessert, and then let's have some brandy and let's have some cigars and what like.
Yeah.
And for me personally, some people love that, and it's fun for a hot minute. And for me, I'd just be like, I just want to like have a salad or have a little simple meal and like go home or take a walk in the park or whatever, like anything but this. Um, which is why, I don't do it anymore. But yeah, the joy of alignment can be so simple and is so powerfully nourishing for us,
Yeah.
and we're nourished by the network of connections that we have. And so
Mhm.
this includes, for me too, now I go around and I teach courses all over the country and world around talking to trees. um you know that's one of the offerings, and I do that because the trees came to me. I'm open as a medium and channel. I talk to all kinds of things and relate to them, and they're like, okay,
Mhm.
you're going to start offering this. And I'm like, at the time, this was a couple years ago, I was like, no, I'm busy doing the other programs. They're like, no,
Yeah.
no, you're doing this now. And it's like, so like my friends now everywhere I go are the trees and plants, and then the humans
Mhm.
I meet, and then also in the spirit world, like every place has its own connections. Of course, we're talking about dragons and other fae and other things.
Yes.
The world is so rich of connection, and now going around the world, there's so many ways that we can connect, and that fills our spirit, expands our experience, fills us with so much light and love and connection, that then that snowballs into more connection and more love and more beauty, and then it just
Yes.
goes from there. So good.
Yes. Absolutely. And the traveling around the world, I feel like it's bringing me back to like The Alchemist. It's interesting. It's like you think you have to make this trek and you have to have your what's it called? Not homage. It's like your the transition into manhood and finding wisdom and all
Uh,
those things. And it's like he never had to leave. He was always there,
so
but he had to travel to realize he was not there. So it's like that.
early on, I met this beautiful man. I was living in Aspen, Colorado, up in the mountains of Colorado, and there was this man who made drums and rattles, Native American like rawhide drums and rattles, which I really wanted to learn. And so I spent some time with him, and he agreed to mentor me. He took me out to his cabin out in the woods, and long story short, I realized afterwards that he was my first teacher of non-dual transmission, of non-dual awareness. So he was
Mm,
using this method of like craftsmanship to transmit non-dual unity consciousness across all things.
wow.
Um, and so I had a summer with him with his teachings and transmissions, and I knew that he changed my life, but at the time I didn't have the words until years later for what that was. And
Hmm.
then at the time, I was still thinking I was going to be a famous scientist, and I was traveling the world being a biologist. And so I told him, "Oh, I'm going to Africa to do this study." And he
Hmm.
specifically, just like you said, he wrote me a postcard, and it was like, "You don't need to go to Africa. Everything you need is right here, et cetera." Exactly what you just said. He literally sent me
Hmm.
a postcard that gave me that message. You have everything you need right where you are, basically.
Yeah.
And I
Hmm.
was young and arrogant, and I wrote him back sort of a testy, arrogant young man letter of like, I'm finding my future and thanks, but whatever, kind of thing. And like, that was the last I ever heard from him. And years later, as I awakened into and realized who he was, that he was the first human to transmit this non-dual state to me, and realized how precious, what a beautiful teacher he was for me. I
Hmm.
looked him up, and he'd already passed away.
Oh, well,
Um,
he still know you can still talk to
he
him.
still
I
no, we connect, and we
yeah,
connect, and but it's beautiful because I literally received that postcard from my teacher, and it was, he was 100% right. Like I didn't need to go anywhere, but just as you said, I needed to travel the world to be able to see that I didn't need to go anywhere.
yeah.
Um, I have a daughter who's 17, and she just told me she wanted to live with her mom, and so I have some freedom again. But there was, 16 years of a world where I wasn't able to travel for more than 2 days.
Yeah.
And so for like 16 years of my expansion and my spiritual growth, et cetera, I was in this world where I was very much through circumstance that I created in the universe, very
Mhm,
much constrained to the Bay Area or very quick trips to local areas
mhm.
around. And for years I was like fighting against that. And then I just surrendered that, okay, it's fine, everything is here. And then the joke is, as soon as I surrendered into that, things shifted where now I'm in South America, and I've been all over
Isn't
the
that
world
funny?
again.
Yeah.
When we surrender our troubles, it is true that they open up and disappear in very,
Yes.
very unexpected ways, for better or worse.
I totally understand what you're saying, like, having your life by design and not being able to travel, not having freedom. I similarly, I had my son when I was young. I was 17 when I had him, and I really didn't start traveling until, I guess, like, the past 5 years, uh, is the most I've ever traveled in my life. And I'm not gonna stop. It's only going up from here. So,
Yeah,
but I did enroll in a workshop. It's 5 weeks long in Puerto Rico to learn how to mix and build cob. But this
beautiful.
structure that we're gonna be working on does not have any framing.
Yeah,
So I'll have to probably learn a little bit more about how to incorporate the framing because that's, I would say, pretty important. So, but at least mixing it and understanding, like, how to find land, where to, how to source the stuff, what parts to mix and how much and all of that. That'll be really awesome. And my intention with that is to learn how to be free anywhere because cob is all over the world. You can find many
yeah.
different places, different environments that support that, and it's
Most of the houses here where I'm currently in Peru, most of the houses are a version of that here
yeah,
in Peru. Mud
yeah,
construction and with
yeah.
some timber framing, some simple timber framing from like the local trees.
Hmm.
But what came to me right as you were saying, sorry to interrupt, what came to me right was you were talking about your hands in the mud for 5 weeks, 6 weeks
Hmm.
was, actually spiritually, what flashed to me was like, oh, and you mentioned you have like earth dragon energy. You're going to be hands in the mud
Yes.
literally every day, whatever, for
Yeah.
weeks at a time, like deeply connecting with the spirits and the energies of that
Oh
place
yes.
and
Yes.
creating with that and manifesting with that. And that actually alone is going to be the magic that you don't even know you need,
Oh, yes, absolutely. I
right?
actually already know that, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole,
No, 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 100%. Of course you know
but
it, but I'm
literally,
just like,
I saw it and I was like, "That's what I need to do." I know that.
yeah,
Also, I knew about the workshop before I went to my most recent retreat, but while I was at the retreat, we pulled cards before,
yeah.
for the each night in the ceremony. One night, I pulled a card for the blue mud dauber. And the card
Oh,
is,
that's
it says
funny.
independence, and it's the ability to, go anywhere and make a home anywhere, even from like other nests,
Yeah,
and the
beautiful.
general propensity to eliminate threats, which is
Yeah,
beneficial to any ecosystem. And I was like,
yeah. Okay, we're doing
"Okay."
this.
But
Yeah,
yeah, so then when I received that in the ceremony, I was like, "This I have to do. I
yeah,
have to do it." And I know it sounds crazy. Like, I have an 8-year-old and I have a 19-year-old son, and I'm trying to have him and his girlfriend make sure that, they can manage the household for 5 weeks, and I'm gonna pay them. But I think it's gonna be a good life experience too,
yeah,
just
of
to
course.
learn how to live without me. Maybe he'll appreciate me more when I return. But
Maybe.
but I think it's really important. And what I would like to say to anyone who feels a little bit trapped by the life that they built for themselves, you're not trapped, and you do have freedom. And if you find something that will bring you joy and you feel that it's important for you to learn, and you just feel in your gut that it's aligned with your future, I encourage you to send it.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
One of the things too is, really often I get people coming to me for sessions, and there's different people who are different places on the path, but there's this one category of people that come to me for sessions, and they sort of come up and they're a little uncertain, like why they booked the session, and they're even maybe a little embarrassed. They booked the session with me, but they're sort of like tentative, and there's some version of the thing like they'll think like, well, you'll think I'm crazy, but I kind of know I'm meant to do this. There's some version of that, right? You've heard
Yeah.
some version of that too, right? And there it happens. I'm gonna say like 20% of people that book with me, they say something like, "Hey, you might think I'm crazy or silly, or like you might think this is a weird fantasy, or what? I'm not really sure if I can really do this, but." And then they say something that's so true, so pure, so aligned, so beautiful that it's inexplicably 100% what they need to be doing, and they know
Hmm.
it, but they just need permission.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I do
And
that
and
too.
I always say
Yeah.
like, "Oh my goodness, that's wonderful." And we go into their angels and spirit guides and ancestors and Akashic records and just affirm, "Yeah, this is possible for you." You know?
Hmm.
Doesn't mean that every like pipe dream that you see, like if it's some pipe dream that you see, like you're watching TV and you're like, "Oh, I want the mega yacht and go party in the Caribbean." I don't know. That's like some thought. But that's
Hmm.
different from like there's this soul yearning of like that something unfolds from your soul and gives you a
Yeah.
vision of a beautiful, future possibility for you. That's not
Yes.
it's
Yes.
actually your soul's path. And, as you just said, like encouraging people to send it in all ways is
Yeah.
the thing. And
Yeah.
as we send it, even if it's not like where we end up, that allows us to have the momentum to then
Yeah.
flip over and go exactly where we need to go. And what happens is so magical. Back to that again.
Yeah. You'll take a little piece from everywhere you go, and it'll all collectively make sense. Um,
100%.
it's
So you're going to come back a different woman in a few weeks. When do you leave for that? Pretty soon.
it'll be it's January 17th through February 22nd, but I think I'm
Amazing.
gonna stay a couple days after that and
Yeah, you
just
are.
kinda have fun.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, I've never been to Puerto Rico, so that'll be cool.
Yeah, I
Uh,
have not been to those lands. And one thing I love about travel from this spiritual perspective is like I love to say like we're pollinators,
mhm,
which is a form of saying grid work, right? We're called to certain
yeah,
places to receive and also offer energy for and to and with the land and environment there.
yeah,
And like we're all called in different ways to both, our human bodies are such energetic powerhouses of transformation. We're here on earth in the most positive way to use our energetic awareness and spiritual quote gifts of connection and transformation and alchemy. And we do this with the land and the spirits and the energies there. And we're meant to cruise around the way we do to, from this sort of Western perspective, perform this service of energy transfer. But it's
mhm,
simply, it just it's like a bee goes around to all the flowers in a field and collects the nectar and pollinates the flowers and allows that field and the flowers to regrow. It's as
yeah,
simple as that. Like that's
yeah.
part of what humans are here for.
As you were talking, I just recalled, this must have been about 6 or 7 years ago. But I remember I was outside one night with my husband. That's the term I like to use instead of ex-husband. Yeah, husband. And I was looking up at the stars, and something came to me because I always wanted to travel. I wanted to go to Yellowstone. I still haven't been. I know I'm going to. I'm going to travel everywhere I want to. So I'm not worried. But back then, I remember thinking like, we never took vacations. We didn't have a honeymoon. We didn't do anything because he had a business and it was always all about the business. And we definitely didn't travel anywhere for more than 2 days, and if we did, I had to pack everything and then wash everything, so it wasn't really fun, right? So I remember one night looking up at the stars and I said, it's okay if we don't travel because we have to work and it's really important. And, when we die, I think that we'll just be able to bloop wherever we want. We'll just be able to close our eyes and be like, bloop, and we'll be anywhere we want and I'll see everyone then. And that is the saddest fucking thing I've ever heard. But I was really trying to make myself feel better. And I
Yeah,
remember saying that and I really believed it. And I was like, it's that was my way of trying to make it okay. It's okay
yeah.
if I
It's
don't get to
okay.
travel in this life. I'll do
Yeah.
it when I die. That's what? That is not what we're supposed to do. You know? It's crazy to me now to think about. It's very funny.
And, like, for some people, maybe listening to this too, it's hard to say, like, there's some people that maybe it's not travel, you know? For some
Yeah.
people, maybe it's an experience back home, maybe it's a new hobby or a new skill or a new way of
Mhm.
living where you are, you know?
Mhm.
It's like it's
Yes.
about our soul's expression. For some of us, it is travel. For some of us, it might again be, again, a new expression of living in your maybe you're already in your place and you fully
Yeah.
know, like, "This is my place."
Yeah.
And, and the adjustment is literally just, like, getting out in nature more and being more aligned with your life wherever it is. Like, it can look differently for all of us,
Mhm.
um, but following that version of there's a loud, like, siren outside.
Oh,
No,
I can't hear it.
you can't. Okay, perfect. Following that version of, like, okay, you'll think I'm crazy, but really I know my life should be like this.
Yes.
That is the true thing for you.
Yes. Yes.
Whatever that looks like. And for many of us, it is cruising around and experiencing different energies and integrating that and alchemizing that,
Mhm.
in different ways. But yeah.
Yeah. It's funny when you say I say that a lot. You might think I'm crazy, or this is going to sound crazy before I say something crazy, because I'm just trying to prepare people. I'm just trying to be nice. But it's funny you say that because I remember one time I went to see my local shaman. The first time I went to see her, I was trying to describe to her how I was seeing different frequencies and that I saw someone's face change. And I was like, I swear I'm not crazy, but I can see like these black spots swirling around everywhere and like bright flashes. And she's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm a shaman. Like, you don't have to say, no, like, I believe you. Okay. You don't have to say anything. Like, you have
Yeah.
this gift. But that was before I knew. Okay. So when I was trying to speak and say,
Yeah. For sure.
something might be wrong. You might think I'm
Yeah.
crazy. I feel crazy.
Yeah.
This is
For
what's going
sure.
on. And she was just like, I'm a shaman.
I got you, girl. I got you. Like, we see this. No, for sure. And as we expand out, we can just accept things
Yeah.
without taking them for granted. But so now, people talk about, like, entities and spirits and all kinds of things. And, like, yeah, no big deal, matter of fact, and people are like,
Yes.
do you think possibly that there's something impacting me in this? Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Yeah.
There's nothing at this point. There's
99.9% of
no
the time.
version of this of spiritual experiences that when we do these readings that we do, like, we haven't heard people talk about. I don't. There's nothing new under the sun. There probably is some version, but, like, you know, people are experiencing things all the time, every day, and we're taught not to trust what we already know to be true. It's so wild,
Yeah. It
right? The
is.
veil that's been thrown over us by our cultural conditioning is so
It's a
powerful that
mhm.
we're taught not to trust the natural energetic connections of our bodies and energy fields. It's so wild.
And to always be seeking something else to look at or
Yeah,
watch or
that's right.
it's like numbing out with the TV and all the things
So
because
easy.
initially I mean my mediumship is oh, actually it's not intermittent. I was going to say it's intermittent. It's not.
No,
But
it's
things are
not.
always elevated by astrological transits and different things. So
Sure,
sometimes it's heightened, sometimes it's
of course.
could be whatever I have going on. Who knows?
Yeah,
Sometimes it's more clear. So I don't call myself a medium, though I am a
right.
medium.
Mhm.
Um,
I would say everyone's a medium, right? There's nothing
yes.
special to whatever degree.
Well,
We all are that, and we can just choose what gifts we want to with our path, like, bring forward.
yes. There's something to that though. I've heard that every psychic is a medium, but not wait, every medium is psychic, but not every psychic is a medium,
Hmm.
is what I've heard.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is that energetically, humans are made to receive.
Yeah.
Energetically, humans, our energy bodies and systems are 100% connected to all things in the universe.
Hmm.
And so we are giving and receiving energies and frequencies continuously, all of us, all the time.
Hmm.
So
We have that
energetically, all
capability,
of us
whether it's
have
turned
that.
on.
And it's
Yes.
just a choice of, like, yeah, we choose, like there are some people on the shamanic path, for example, just we were talking about that, that want to really be deeply involved with the earth spirits and certain places of energies and even like plant medicines in a very specific way. Amazing, beautiful, and go really, really deep in that. And those
Hmm.
people might not, in this fantasy I'm making up, be connected to astral realms and angels in the way that I am. And there's no
Hmm.
good or bad for either of
Hmm.
those. Both of those are needed, and they're just different ways of interacting with the universe.
Yes,
But
yes.
we all have the abilities to choose either of that and to go down the path. We just need to train ourselves and open up and uncondition
Yeah.
the beliefs that we're not that.
It's so interesting. As we were just talking, I was imagining the different times in my life where I was pretty certain that I did see and sense spirit around me, but this was
Yeah.
before I had my awakening.
Oops.
One
Yeah,
of many,
exactly.
right? Well, it was just after I had my son. He was very young, maybe less than 2 months old. And my parents, because I lived with them, I was 17, they went away for the weekend and I was home alone. And it seemed like whenever I was feeding him, because I would be looking down at him, my peripheral was the only way I was able to see anything else in the room. And I kept seeing somebody walking around, standing in the corner, different, like I kept seeing it and I started to get scared. And then I was like, this is silly. Like you're a parent now. Like you can't be afraid of ghosts. Like get. So, so I said to my mom, I'm like, Mom, I'm a little bit scared because I called her. I'm a little bit scared. I feel like I can see somebody, and then anytime I go to look, like they're not there, but like I see them in my peripheral, but they're not there when I look. And she goes, "Oh, I think you're just tired. You might be hallucinating." Blah blah. Like I've never hallucinated in my life, and I'm not really that tired, but okay. And then I was talking about it later, maybe like a week later, at my grandmother's house, and we were having like a little family get together. And I had an uncle who was diagnosed schizophrenic, and I was describing how I was certain that I was seeing someone in the room with us, but anytime that I looked with my eyes, they were gone. And
Yeah,
that I was thinking about it. And I think that when you look something straight on, your brain filters it out. But if
there
it's
you
in your
go.
peripheral, you're actually seeing it. S- So I made this statement and I said, I think that there are things around us all the time, but we just can't see it, like our brains filter it out. But some people can see it. But I think it's all around us all the time. And I think that it's real. And he was like, yes, I agree with you. I agree with you. But at the time, I was like, well, yeah, you would agree with me because you're talking about how you can see people. He's since passed. And I now wish that I was able to talk with him more because I think that he was gifted, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so my dad was a psychiatrist, and he's passed away also with dementia a few years ago. But early on in his career, this was the 70s, and all kinds of things were flowing through the culture at that time. So he wrote, like, in his residency, like academic papers about psychiatric perspectives on, like, for example, people who were believed that they were abducted by UFOs.
Hmm.
And he did a whole study where he interviewed, I don't know, dozens, tons of people who had been abducted, who were certain they had been abducted. And he said a few things in that paper. I read that recently after he passed away. I read sort of all of his papers after he passed away, and I was blown away by, like, his awareness, and also then how he needed to, as a young psychiatrist, as a young doctor, academic, put it into the framework of society to make it acceptable. So he said in the paper, he said, like, there is no psychiatric reason that I don't. He's like, I fully believe these people had the experiences they had.
Hmm. Hmm.
He's like, he's like, I can't discount it from any, like, medical reason that they're not fully conscious and had the experiences they had. And
Hmm.
simultaneously, he had to say, I also can't. Mm, he says, like, something like, I can't omit the possibility that these people are all psychotic.
Yeah. Yes. Oh,
Like,
I
he's
know.
like,
I've
he's like,
I've had three
both I
friends
know
in
this is real, and
psychological.
also I
Yeah.
have to make them have
Yes.
some, some deviation from normality. And then also he did a whole study on meditation, and kind of the same thing. He's like, these people were massively supported and helped and nourished by this meditation practice. And also, he sort of then had to make some sort of dismissive comment around, like, we can't also like dismiss this as if it's not like a mass psychosis of these people.
Yes.
So like
Yes.
psychiatry has to sort of, anything that's quote not normal
You have to
has to
cover your
vilify it in some way. It's so
yes.
wild.
They have
It's
to
so wild
cover
that
it
we
with
have to do that.
a
And yet, yeah,
blanket
no, please.
statements. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I mean, there's a powerful story from Ram Dass that when he came back from India, and I forget the first or second time, but he had been studying with all these psychedelics in the US at Harvard, and then went to India and had met this guru and had these really intense spiritual experiences. He came back from one of these trips where he's wearing a dress, wearing this Indian costume, and has a huge beard and like walks around barefoot, and he was sort of a upper middle class Jewish good boy from New England. This went to country clubs and was very proper before this. And then his brother was being hospitalized in a mental institution, and he goes to see his brother, and he was hospitalized and institutionalized. And his brother was like, "Hey, you know what? I know I'm Jesus. I know I have the answers." And Ram
mhm.
Dass says like, "Oh, I also know I'm God, but I also know that you're God too." You know,
Yes.
but Ram Dass
Mhm.
was able to get away from this and come back as a spiritual teacher. And his brother, with many of the same realizations, then got stuck in society and have
Yeah.
himself be institutionalized. And then they're there
Yes.
saying the same visions of reality, but it was different perspectives. And one is
Yes.
free and revered, and I'm talking about him now, and the other one is stuck in a mental hospital.
Right?
Like, crazy and being wise
Right?
are such a sliver of closeness with each other, is the point. Like with your uncle, with my
Yes.
father's visions, with this
Yes.
Ramdas story. Like,
They
right, there are
say
some days, I'm sure you're the same. When I'm doing these readings, and I talk to my sister a lot, she's also very awakened, and we kind of laugh sometimes, and she's on her own path of like readings and things too. And we're like, we whisper to each other like, do you think maybe we're just both completely insane and this is all just crazy? Right?
no. No.
Right?
I've heard the saying that often being crazy is just being right too early. Yeah. I think that that is totally the case, especially like when I had my initial awakening, I was talking with my family members. Eventually, I started to get a little bit uncomfortable being by myself because I was aware of lots of things moving around me, and I was receiving a lot of information, but it wasn't welcomed, so I did not want it. I just wanted to be normal. So I was like, mom, dad, like I need to hang out with you guys. I'm alone too much. Like I don't want to be here by myself anymore. So I went to their house and stayed over for a couple of nights, and I was talking with them the next morning after I stayed there, and I was like, do you guys realize that everything we do every day doesn't actually matter? And it matters so much more how we feel than what we're doing. And if everyone in America like just didn't pay their mortgage on the first of the month, but instead like went on vacation, what the fuck would they do? Like, and I was like asking all these questions. I was like, what if we all just realized that like we are God and nature and like that's
How
what's
old were you?
important? I was 33. I was
Mhm.
33. And my family was saying that they thought something was wrong with me. They were like, "Why are you talking like this? You never talk like this. You don't talk about God. Like, why are you talking like this? You might need to be evaluated." And I was like, "But what I'm saying is so lovely. Like, what do you mean?" It's right also. First of all, it's right. Second of all, it sounds great. Why are you saying I'm crazy? Yeah.
The societal weight that we have in the West, in the US in particular, where both of us are, it is so strong.
Mhm.
But what's beautiful is that this web of awakening is inexplicably happening in all kinds of cultures and all enclaves of society all across the world, in ways that there's more and more of us that look at each other and know that the truth of that world is not real, and that what we're experiencing now in these, this way that we've been talking this whole podcast,
Mhm.
this is
Mhm.
what is real. That
Yes.
the world is energetic, expansive, and amazing, and we're a part of that, and we can connect with all these realms and beings across the realms, and it's all the things.
Yeah.
this is what's real, and that,
Yes, and.
all of those things that you were even speaking to back then. Yeah, no, for sure. That is this limited, small path that is not necessary anymore.
Mhm.
But, also the world that, like, the world that I was born into, the world that our parents were born into, it was more dense. We
Mhm.
absolutely are in this period of rapid awakening where, particularly the last 5 years, but it's been going on for a long time. The expansion of energy, the connection, the immediacy of spiritual accessibility is so powerful and palpable in ways that it just wasn't even a few years before that. So
Yeah.
things are even changing rapidly where, like the young kids, people are being more now, and the super young adults now have been raised in a time where they take this spiritual individual connection for granted. And it's so
Mhm.
beautiful compared
Mhm.
to the disconnection and heaviness and weight that we experienced when we were born, and also like our parents for sure and grandparents. So
Yes.
it's amazing. Like I can see it in my life, the density of what from when I was born to now. It's miraculously different, the world that we live in, that I'm living in now compared to when I was born.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
it's a different time. We are absolutely in a new age, a new era, a new frequency, a new timeline, whatever language we want to use around that. Like
Mhm.
things are probably powerfully different now than they were before, full
Yes.
stop. And that is
Yes.
part of this awakening. Like we are rising individually, but also collectively together as part of the awakening of this world, this universe, this timeline, this energy.
Mhm.
So, so
Mhm.
it's
And
so much fun.
we're all here for each other, and I'm so thankful that you're here
Yeah.
with your
Thank
perspective
you,
and
Maria.
experience and viewpoints to offer compassion, kindness, and understanding for someone else going through this. And how fortunate all of your sitters are to be able to work with you, because I
Thank you
know
so much.
firsthand, I'm very, very lucky to be able to have you as a resource when I'm stuck on some things. And I know, I'm always available. And we love to chat. Sometimes you call me up when you're traveling, you have a couple hours in the car, and you
That's
say,
right. Like, hey, what's
"Welcome,
going on?
Steve." I
So much
love it.
fun. So much fun.
Yes. This was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being here with
Yeah,
me today.
absolutely.
And I can't wait till next time.
Until next time, it's been a joy. Have a great one. Bye.
Thank you so much.
As we close out this conversation, I want to thank Aaron for his openness and the depth that he brought into this space. I really appreciate the way we were able to hold complexity here, talking about awakening, mental health, fear, spirits, and perception without needing to oversimplify any of it. These are conversations that require discernment, compassion, and context. And my hope is that something shared here helped you feel more grounded in your own experience. If you want to connect with Aaron and his work, you can find him at Natural Heart Alchemy. You can find me at Hyacinth Healing and digintoconsulting.com. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for trusting in your own lived experience. I'll see you in the next episode.